Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Wedding Ceremony Podcast. We talk about anything and everything that has to do with wedding ceremonies. My name is Clint Hufton. With me is a gentleman that wrote the book, the one and only J.P. Reynolds.
Clint, so good to be with you, with our people.
With our people. Absolutely. If you're joining us for the first time, you should know that the reason the Wedding Ceremony Podcast exists is because JP and I are both wedding officiants. We've been doing it for a long time, non denominational, which means everything. And if you're in the industry, you know that every single wedding is unique and has its own stories. And that's what we bring to this conversation because there's always something new. You should also know that JP, when I said he wrote the book, he has written books, plural, about wedding ceremonies, about how to prepare for them, how to officiate them. And they are all in the Amazon store and in the Kindle store in Amazon. And he is also a communications expert. Thebusinessofconfidence.com is that website. His wedding website is jprweddings.com. Mine is my name, Clint Huff, CLINTHUFFT.com for all the things that I do. JP, it's a fascinating thing, the nuances of our job of being a wedding officiant. I mean, there's a lot of different things that are kind of all mixed into it. Obviously, public speaking is one of them. You know, you're an expert, so you know that communications is critical. And that's not only with the clients, but that also is with everybody attached to the clients and also the wedding vendors and the venue and all of that level of communication is critical. So I'm about to do a wedding this weekend. The couple is going to have the big wedding later, like a year from now, but they wanted to have a celebration of them getting legally married. It's in another country. They all live someplace other than where I live. And so that means that communication is critical. There's so many moving parts. The couple wanted the friends and family to tell stories about them to kind of explain who are we and why did we fall in love and that sort of thing. And I thought that sounds like a lot of fun. Let's do that. It turns out the bride had a different idea of what that was going to look like than what started happening in my computer because she contacted, I'm counting over 20 people now that have sent me little speeches, little stories, and that sort of thing. I said, the stories have to be less than 3 minutes. Otherwise, this is going to last over an hour. Then I just got a text from the event planner that's saying the couple's starting to kind of freak out because they don't want it to be that long. They want it to be around 20 minutes. And I thought, okay, well, the original premise then was built on the wrong foundation because I seriously have had emails from over 20 people saying, oh, well, I would tell this story and I would tell that story and da da da. There's still a lot of work to do, even though the wedding's going to be in just a few days. The event planner texted me this morning and said the couple's a little concerned because they originally had asked me, how long do you think it'll take? And I said, well, it's going to take at least 45 minutes. Oh, no, no, no. They want it to last about 20 minutes. And then I'm thinking, okay, all those people that were told to email me with their stories. Now we have to go back to them and say, thank you, but no thank you. There's so many moving parts. And plus, because it's someplace I've never been before, I don't really understand the logistics of it. You know, my job in this particular case, when I said we are a lot of different things as wedding officiants, including public speakers and whatever, we are also masters of ceremony. And so that means because I've been doing that for most of my adult life, that is what this is going to be primarily. And then at the very end, I'm going to ask them the marriage questions, the vows, and the rings.
Right.
Most of what we're going to do is going to be people talking about the couple, and that has to all be orchestrated. And I'm the guy that has to do all of that. How many mics do you need? I think we only need two. Where's everybody going to be? I don't know. How many people are going to be talking? Well, less than I thought. We're just working all of that out. But I think it's interesting that wedding ceremonies take a million different shapes and sizes, and we have to navigate all of that because ultimately, once we start talking, we're the ringleader, so to speak. Does that make sense?
It does. And, giving folks a little peek into the method behind our madness prior to jumping onto this session, you, in typical gracious fashion, asked me, was there anything I wanted to talk about? There were a number of items that I could have proposed, and I thought, oh, it's just so complicated. And actually, your story is a perfect example of the complications of my stories because stereotypically, and again, our approaches are different in that you hand couples a workbook that they can create their ceremony. I typically, couples, we go through the outline, but they don't have to pick and choose the actual wording, leave that to me. stereotypically, folks will come, we will discuss what do you want, what do you want in your ceremony. By the end of the conversation, I will have proposed an outline. And it follows the standard ceremony outline of procession and welcome, maybe a reading. I offer a few words of good cheer to a couple, moving to the vows and the rings. And then after the vows and the rings, if there's any unity type thing that they want, then it's time to bring closure to the ceremony. So it's a tried and true formula. Recently, though, I have been working with couples who have, much as you're describing with your couple, ideas that go above and beyond the traditional outline for a ceremony structure. It is challenging because we do not want to replicate a Catholic mass that lasts for an hour, which is my background, right, as a former priest. And most couples are looking at the max 30 minutes. 30 minutes max is like, well, that's a long wedding. There's, Cirque du Soleil elements in a 30-minute wedding. That's why it's 30 minutes. People are typically looking at that start to finish 20, 22 and a half minute ceremony. I do have couples who I'm working with now who are introducing elements that would bring us into something that is very unique and goes beyond a 20-minute limit. I always remind couples that not everything has to be done in the ceremony, in the
Right.
sense that you are there for, if not a full weekend, at least for a Friday night, a Friday afternoon, a Friday night, then if it's a stereotypical with a Saturday wedding, how can you take some of the elements that you were thinking about for the ceremony and spreading them throughout the entire celebration? Yes. So when you said we are an MC, yes, we are a choreographer. I don't necessarily primarily think of myself as an MC. I am doing a wedding this week where I am definitely being an MC. I'm not sure who the couple thought they were hiring when they hired me because it is a cross-cultural celebration. The bride is one culture, the groom is another culture, very strong cultures in terms of how weddings are celebrated. So there are very rich traditions. I suspect what's happening is the bride's parents are saying, we need to see this element, this element, this element. I have no doubt that the groom's family said, we need to see this element, this element, this element. And so what's going to happen is, I'm thinking of this as my National Geographic wedding. I'll open it, welcome everybody, and then I simply turn over the bride's cultural aspects to people she has designated, and they will do that particular culture. Then I will introduce and welcome the folks who are going to guide the groom's cultural elements. Then I come back to do the traditional Western vow. However, they said to me that they wanted to write their own vows. I said, great. I gave them a guide that I've written. Their personal vows are 3 sentences. In the context of this ceremony, what would traditionally be the heart of the ceremony, the gifting of the vow, is now going to be overshadowed by all of these cross-cultural elements that are wonderful and beautiful and deeply meaningful. But in terms of the gifting of the vows, which is the heart of the Western ceremony, they're going to kind of 3 sentences can easily get lost in the midst of all of this. This is one of the few times where I really think that I truly am the MC. It's a collection of elements, and I'm just the host of the program. And that's fine. It is though, for me, I'm invited to reorient myself for my position in what I'm doing.
Oh, that's interesting the way you phrase that, to reorient yourself. What I'm hearing you say is that if we live repetitively in a specific structure and we're so used to that structure, it's almost like second nature, almost like muscle memory. And then we're asked to now step outside of that structure or expand it or modify it or whatever the case may be. It kind of slaps us out of our rhythms, which can be a little scary.
Let me say, the wedding structure, no matter what the religious tradition, no matter what the civil tradition, the tradition is a tradition. So it is not like, oh, we're being old-fashioned. It's tried and true. It has a logic to it and it works. But it's also able to expand. But what we're talking about, what you're talking about, what you're going to be involved in, what I'm going to be involved in, is a reformulation of what's going on. And the danger is, you see, the heart of a wedding ceremony is the exchange of vows. That is what's at the heart of the ceremony. That is what we as officiants need to hear. I need to hear these two people say, I take you as my husband, my wife, my spouse. Everything is in service of those vows. If the couple lose sight of that fact and start focusing on, I won't say incidentals, but focusing on what is not the heart of the ceremony, focusing on the visuals and the traditions. The challenge for us is to keep people focused on why are we here? We're here not just for the visuals. We're here to bear witness to those vows. And that's what we have to maintain.
Well, what I found is that whatever energy we bring to that specific part of the ceremony really impacts not just the couple, but all of the guests and everything. And I
Yes.
learned that lesson. I don't know if I ever told you this story. Very, very, very early in my officiant career, a friend of mine, a DJ, said, "You're the only one I thought of that could do this or would be willing to do this. Will you dress up like Elvis and perform the ceremony?" Now, if you're in Las Vegas, maybe that's your profession, but not me. And I said, if they provide the costume, sure. Because again, this is at the very beginning and it was a great experience. So here's what I discovered while doing that. Obviously, they were both getting married for the second time and they wanted to have a lot of fun, and all of that is fine. And I played Elvis and I did the voice and all of that. Again, that's fine. But what I realized when we got down to the exchange of the vows and the ring exchange, the vibe of the thing changed completely. Because up until that point, it was a lot of fun and people were laughing and all of that and saying the catchphrases that would make you think of Elvis or whatever. And it was exactly what the couple had envisioned. But what I don't think they realized was going to happen is that when they had to actually look at each other, connect to each other emotionally, and say the important words, which is exactly what you're explaining, the vibe changed and it became very, very cool. Not overly serious, but with real emotional intent. That shift I thought was fantastic. What I've seen in, we've also not only performed our ceremonies, but we also have observed a lot of different types of ceremonies, especially like every year I go to a conference and I'm in a room with like 50 officiants and they all have different ideas of what this is supposed to be, what our job is supposed to be, what a ceremony is supposed to be, and that sort of thing. The thing that I've noticed is that every time they get to the key parts, which is what you're talking about, the vibe changes and a good officiant will ride that wave and kind of guide the energy so that nobody takes it for granted or thinks it isn't serious. This isn't really real. There was a couple, she was an event planner. She fell in love with this guy. And then she asked me if he wanted to become an officiant. So I trained him. But when it was time for them to get married, they flew to the Caribbean and they found a guy in North Carolina that was a Captain Jack Sparrow lookalike imitator. And they hired him to fly into wherever they were in the Caribbean and perform the ceremony. And he did it totally in character. They were just raving about how great it was and it was exactly what they wanted and whatever. But I know for a fact that when they got to the serious parts, and maybe, they were still laughing or whatever, but then when they had to actually put the ring on each other's finger and they had to actually say, I do, and they had to actually say, I take you to be my, that the vibe changed. And I don't know how this particular Captain Jack Sparrow handled that, but I can guarantee that he felt it because it sounds to me like this is not his first rodeo. When they get to that point, then he brings it in, so to speak, because I think of the fun stuff as being moving outward. Even if you're not doing funny things, but you're doing heritage rituals, there still is a respect and an honor for that. But the thing that happened between the couple specifically has a completely different vibe. And I actually love that when you feel that and the whole, everybody feels that, oh, now this is.
Let me say that, yes, I agree with everything that you said. I will add, though, it takes tremendous skill to bring the focus back or to channel all of this energy to the focus of the seriousness of the vows and the rings in hands that are not capable, it could get lost in all of the, I'll call it gimmicks or glitz or glamour or ritual, no matter how ancient, to really, and that is why I have always said, I've taught public speaking. You are manipulating, you are playing with the audience. And I say that respectfully. If you don't know how to manipulate the audience and bring them into that major pivot, then the ceremony becomes a sideshow. And that is the real challenge for an officiant, to keep the focus where the focus is meant to be, while also weaving and incorporating and playing with all of these unusual elements.
As an MC, I also watch a lot of other people MC. That's just no matter what our profession is, we see other people doing it. And I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of things that really frustrate me. And you've seen it over 100 times where somebody, as an MC, they feed off of the energy that they get from the audience. Unfortunately, they don't realize that the event has a rhythm to it, an ebb and a flow. And in order to be able to make sure that the height or the climax or the pinnacle of the emotional experience, everybody is where we need them to be, so to speak. When an MC says from the I can't hear you, come on, you can do better than that, at the very beginning of whatever it is, I don't do that. Same thing with a wedding ceremony. You know what it's like when I was DJing in nightclubs and we would do New Year's Eve, there was so much energy in the room that it was very easy for the energy to peak at like 11. But we have another hour to go and there's going to be midnight and we better have everybody ready and be there when I need them. If I'm doing an athletic competition or something like that, whether it be in front of a live audience or on camera, whatever, the important thing is that the live audience has to be there when we need them at the very end when we announce them. And if I get too much from them too early, it goes back to our job as an MC, is that we need the energy when we need the energy. Somebody who doesn't have the experience will sometimes take too much from the guests and from the couple. And so that when we're ready for the most pivotal moments, the energy that we were hoping for is dissipated. My little trick, and for those of you that are officiants and you want to know like tips and tricks, that sort of thing, the easiest way to do what JP and I are talking about is to focus on the couple. That really everything is all about the couple. And if I talk directly to the couple and that sort of thing, there's only a few times where I'll bring in the guests and talk to them, but most of the time I'm talking directly to the couple. When it's time for the vows, whether they be repeat after me or whatever we do, to be able to talk directly to the couple and set the table. Sometimes with the I do question, I'll set the table by saying, Bob, we've reached that point. I have to ask you a question. Are you ready? Now everybody gets drawn in. For the repeat after me vows, I always set it up with something along the lines of, you're about to say something that's going to change your lives. After these vows, you will say to the world, this is your husband and this is your wife. And then we go into the vows. It's that setup, talking directly to the couple, that brings everybody into the moment right when we need them for the couple. That's the only gimmick that I found works is by making it a specific conversation directly to the couple. Then the guests can't help but be pulled in. And it doesn't take a lot of thought on my part. It's just something that, because we want it to be all about the couple anyway, set the table and then talk to the couple. It always works.
Yes, Clint. It does always work.
No, that's good. I think we've covered it.
So via con Dios.
Thank you. JP, tell everybody how they can get in touch with you.
My website is jprweddings.com. And on the website, you'll find everything you need to know in terms of contacting me.
Brilliant. My website is my name, Clint Huff, CLINTHUFFT.com, for all the things that I do. Once again, if you want to watch the YouTube video, then just go to YouTube and put in Wedding Ceremony Podcast, and you should be able to find it. Remember that JP's books are in the Amazon store and in the Kindle store in Amazon. And for communications coaching, thebusinessofconfidence.com is that website. And on the audio side, we want to thank the incredible musicians that play our theme music, the Da Capo Players, DACAPO Players.com. That's it for this episode of the Wedding Ceremony Podcast. This is Clint, and on behalf of JP, we will see you next time.